If you remember the last scene of Boys in the Hood, you had Trey talking to Doughboy on the steps. He said either they don't know, they don't show, or they don't care about what goes on in the hood. That crime bill was caring about what goes on in the hood. It wasn't perfect, and it maybe been an overcorrection and it's caused to some bad things. But it was a group of people trying to help what was going on in our inner cities when we didn't have the capacity to do it ourselves. And now we know better and we're going to do better.
Although some national polls have Joe Biden falling behind candidates Warren and Sanders, in the only poll that matters, Biden still enjoys a comfortable double-digit lead among South Carolina's African-American voters, and we all know that whoever wins this coveted demographic will undoubtedly win the Democratic nomination. One reason for Biden's steady lead with black voters is his team of surrogates like Congressman Cedric Richmond, who serves as co-chair of Biden's campaign. Congressman Richmond represents Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District. He's a Morehouse man who's an outspoken advocate for the black community and one of the newest rock stars in the Democratic Party. He served as chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus and is currently the chairman of the CBC Foundation and House Democratic assistant to the minority whip, making him number 2 to South Carolina's own Congressman Jim Clyburn. On the campaign trail, Congressman Richmond is a relatable straight talker who's not afraid to keep it real. I caught up with him at a recent stop in Charleston at the Blue Jamboree hosted by the Charleston Democratic Party, and I asked him to tell me why he's putting his political capital behind Uncle Joe. Congressman, thank you for taking time to talk to me today. Wanted to start out, tell me why you chose Joe Biden.
Well, first of all, I know him, and I know him because the best way to tell what a person's going to do in the future is to watch and see what they did in the past. Right. And he has been a remarkable senator since day one. He's been a remarkable person since he left that job at a corporate law firm to go to the public defender's office to defend people who were rioting and caught up in the civil rights movement after Dr. King was killed. And so if you go start where a person started and then you end with him being the vice president, ushering in the Affordable Care Act, speaking up for the vulnerable, there's nothing more that I need to know because I know what happened in between, and he's always fought for what's right, and no matter if it was popular or not, and he's always fought for vulnerable people.
Okay. You served with Senator Biden. Can you tell us a little bit, there's been some confusion on where he is on civil rights. You've worked with him, you've known him. Tell me, where is he on civil rights in your opinion?
Well, the truth of the matter is, besides other candidates and now the president questioning his stances, there's never been a question where Joe Biden stood on civil rights. And even the controversy around the first debate, it then came out that his position is the exact same as all the other candidates' position. But if you want to talk about him fighting for those people who were rioting and all of those things, think about it today. That's our young activists that are in the streets. That's Black Lives Matter. That is our progressive youngsters out there. He left to go join the public defender's office to defend them. And so when you think about it in that sense, then you know where he's been. And so I don't fall into the other characterizations from other candidates. I just look at a person's track record and their past record. So
okay. Vice President Biden is doing very well among older African Americans. He doesn't have the same type of support with younger African Americans. What is the campaign doing to increase that support?
Well, we're going to remind our young people who Uncle Joe is. Okay. And he is that steadfast fighter for all people. Now, is he flashy? Probably not. But he's steady. We have a flashy president. We know what that gets us. What we need is somebody who's steady, can right the ship, and who has very real moral values. And so we will remind our young people who are very active and very passionate that Joe Biden is that steady legislator that has real life accomplishments. So he's not flashy about it, but he passed the Violence Against Women Act. For those of us who are concerned about gun violence in our community, about mass shootings around the country, remember, he's the guy that banned assault weapons. So he instituted community policing. So if you think about those things, you know he has the ability to get it done. And I just think that we have to We just have to remind our young people of that.
Okay. At the beginning of the campaign season, everybody said Vice President Biden was the most electable there is. Mm-hmm. Since then, there's been a series of missteps and high-profile mistakes. Do you still believe he is the most electable? And if so, how important is electability?
Electability is very important, but make no mistake about it. There's not one poll that shows Biden versus Trump where Biden doesn't do better than every other Democratic opponent to Trump. We beat Trump by double digits. In fact, let me prove it to you. Joe Biden knows he beats Donald Trump. The polls show he beats Donald Trump. The fact that Donald Trump is asking Ukraine and China for help against Joe Biden shows that Donald Trump knows that Biden beats Donald Trump, which is why he's trying to handpick his general election opponent. Our numbers have never slipped against Donald Trump. We will beat him, and we will beat him like a drum. So electability is not that question. And as far as it goes about perceived stumbles and missteps, Joe Biden is Joe Biden. The one reason why people like him, he's always been authentic. He's going to say what he's thinking, and that's just who he is. So other campaigns and people will try to make a lot of noise about small things, but he has a 40-year track record in elective office. He has 8 years of being the vice president to Barack Obama, where he did amazing stuff. So think about this in reference. His opponents only want to talk about the Clinton years and before. They never, ever want to talk about the Obama years. So if you want to go back to the Clinton years, you have to go to the Obama years too. And the good thing about this country and the good thing about people is as we age, we grow. And I believe right now with the mess that's going on, we need somebody with wisdom and experience and ability to unify this country, protect the most vulnerable, expand health care, double down on education, especially in rural and minority communities. There's only one person who has that track record, and that's Joe Biden.
Okay. Congressman, before I let you go, one last question. If you had the opportunity to talk with African American voters that may be on the fence, they may not be fully behind Biden just yet, what would you say to them?
I would say go look at real records. And I will bring up something that the campaign probably would never bring up. For example, the 94 crime bill, which everybody hints about. Look, it wasn't a perfect bill. It was a correction, maybe an overcorrection to a real problem. But I want our young people to go look at. Everybody talks about today that drug courts are the best new progressive thing ever. Drug courts were in that bill. People talk about the fact that diversion is the best thing ever right now, so we can keep kids from getting a record. Diversion was in that bill. People talk about mandatory minimums are bad things. It hurts African American men. It does. But what was in that bill was the Safety Valve Act that lets judges deviate from mandatory minimums and not give them to young black men. What hurt the country is the abuse of power by prosecutors that would never give Tyrone, Leroy, or Pookie the benefit of diversion, drug court, or the Safety Valve Act. But if your name was Billy, Elliot, or something of that nature, the DAs would do it. So I don't want our young people to get confused about what that bill was and was not. And I by no means is saying it's perfect. But it also had money in there for real community policing, where cops had to get out of their cars and learn who was in their community. You know why that was important? Let's take Alton Sterling, who was killed in my district in Baton Rouge. Alton Sterling sold CDs at that store for years. The fact that we had police officers respond to a call about Alton Sterling that didn't know him, mean that those cops had never been to that store. Had they been to that store, they would have known him. And they would have said, Alton, cut that out. Come here. Let me, somebody said you have a gun on you. Come here. Alton Sterling would still be alive. And so community policing is important. And I want people to understand that we will never get anything perfect. But when people see a problem and they act, you have to. So colors, menace to society, boys in the hood, those weren't made up stories. You're my age. You understand the streets were very hot. It was a different time. And I'll close it with this. If you remember the last scene of Boys in the Hood, you had Trey talking to Doughboy on the steps. He said either they don't know, they don't show, or they don't care about what goes on in the hood. That crime bill was caring about what goes on in the hood. It wasn't perfect, and it maybe been an overcorrection and it's caused to some bad things, but it was a group of people trying to help what was going on in our inner cities when we didn't have the capacity to do it ourselves. And now we know better and we're going to do better. And so if you look at Biden's crime plan now, it is the most progressive, and it is by far leaps and bounds above everybody else. So sometimes you just have to set the record straight with facts and the totality of the environment. So that's what I would hope our young people would look at.
Congressman, thank you for taking time to talk with us.
No problem.